This episode is brought to you by Chaos Labs, one of the leading on-chain risk management firms. You'll be hearing more from them later in the show. This episode is brought to you by Ledger, the most secure hardware wallet trusted by 7 million users and securing 20% of the world's digital assets. We'll be hearing more from them later in the show. Hey Lightspeed listeners, we need your help. Lightspeed is conducting an audience survey to help us get a better picture of who our listeners are and what you want to see from the show. Think of this as our annual review. What do you like about the show? What could we improve on? If you want to contribute, visit the link in our show notes to fill out the survey and help us make a better show for you. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Lightspeed. I'm Jack Kubanek, hosting alongside Ray Dalio's best friend, Mert. Mert, how's it going, man?
Good, boss. How you doing?
Doing pretty well. I want to start there. What was the Ray Dalio picture? It was in Abu Dhabi that you met him?
Correct. I was on the F1 Paddock Club watching the race. It was the last race of the season. And I went with my lead investor from last round, Han Ventures, Katie Han. And we were just outside and looking at the race. And actually, Mike Novogratz was there from Galaxy, where I hopefully convinced him to join Baldao. He seemed convinced. And Ray Dalio just showed up. And at first, I was like, what the hell? Is this real? And then he's actually quite cool and showed them Solana.
Oh, there we go. Was Abu Dhabi Finance Week like? What's the quick recap on that? That was a conference I didn't really know much about until it was happening, and then I was like, oh, everyone's in the UAE now.
Same, actually. I wasn't too familiar with it earlier. It was so there was also a Bitcoin conference, Bitcoin MENA, and as a result, a lot of people were there to begin with. The conference mostly, I would say, and then obviously there was F1 people, and so it was a whole thing due to all those. But they're quite forward in terms of government regulation and how the entire region thinks about Bitcoin or even Solana, Ethereum, etc. And it was cool because you got to talk to a bunch of the regulators and government folks that are basically just businessmen, really. They don't come across as bureaucrats. They just seem like they are into it because they want better tech.
And there's no taxes on crypto gains, right, in the UAE?
Yes, correct. I think that's a bit more recent, but yes.
I'm sure that'll draw a lot of like crypto interest just by itself. I did not travel to the UAE, but I traveled to Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn last night, which is way, way far down the subway line, to pick up a bike I bought on Facebook Marketplace. And this connects to crypto, I promise. I get there, it's this like Eastern European teenager, maybe like a Russian teenager that was selling the bike. And I'm like, hey, do you have Venmo? And he like hands me his phone to like type because he didn't speak any English. He didn't have Venmo or Cash App. And so I was like, all I had was $10 of cash on me. I couldn't pay him for the bike. I was like, what am I supposed to do? And then after thinking, I was like, oh. And then I typed, I was like, do you have a crypto wallet? And he pulled out his MetaMask. And so I was like, boom, problem solved. But then I like, without thinking, just put in his address and sent him some like USDC I had in my wallet. But I sent it to him on Base, and now he can't find it. So it was like almost a big win for crypto real world usage. But this is the benefit of doing everything on the L1, is that you don't accidentally send him USDC on Base instead of ETH. So that's my report from the real world. But
Fun.
yeah, we're supposed to have Max Resnick on today to talk about his jump from Consensus to Anza, but unfortunately people bullied Max too much and now he's sick. He's like got his throat is whatever. It would not be good to have him on the pod. So that will be coming. Fear not. I think probably next week we'll have him on the show. But for today, we're just coming with a regular old vanilla news roundup. And maybe since I mentioned Max Resnick, we can just start with that. I don't want to steal too much of his thunder, but it was a pretty big event on like the crypto online world this week. So I don't know, Mert, what do you think about Max coming to Solana ecosystem?
Extremely bullish. Max is very smart and young, so a big future ahead of him, but also strongly opinionated, which is something I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah,
I have been.
Max is 24. I learned this week. Crazy.
Oh, I
Anyway.
didn't know he was that young. Actually, I just knew he was young, and I've been trying to con him into joining Solana for a while, whether on Twitter with shit posts or privately saying, dude, just come over to the dark side. And so I'm pretty happy about that. And I tweeted that my favorite news of the week hasn't been even announced yet last week, and it now is. So stoked to have him on. I made some other posts around this because when he announced that he joined Solana, the usual suspects started actually just blatantly making up conspiracy theories, which I understand CT is a tribal place and perhaps nuance gets lost, but I think conspiracy theories are a relatively newer territory. So that's great to see. About how he is a Solana plant and all these things, or how it's actually good that Max is leaving an ecosystem that he actually enjoyed working on. And I won't say too much about that, but overall, we're very happy to have him and he'll do some great work here.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of, I mean, at least to hear Max tell it. So I did interview him for the newsletter this week. And I think in the way he explained it is there's a lot of people in Ethereum that were grateful for kind of what he represented there, because he was someone who maybe didn't care as much about falling in line with the orthodoxy about the L2 roadmap and these kinds of things. And he was saying, hey, like this isn't going to work long term. We need to scale the L1. And now you have Dankrad, who's, EF researcher, posting on Twitter about how they need to scale the L1. So he shifted the Overton window in Ethereum, so to speak, you could argue. So I think that like there are a lot of people on ETH who are grateful for him. I would there's a Lightspeed reader who's like an ETH head that I quoted in this article, Paul Dillon Ennis. He's a professor in Ireland and he researches crypto, I guess. And I was asking him about it, and I think he's a little outside of the kind of ETH Twitter industrial complex, if you will. And he was saying, like, look, Max Resnick was not a household name to the level of, say, Justin Drake or something. If those level of folks start leaving, you're really cooked. It's obviously not great to see Max leave Ethereum for Solana if you're an Ethereum fan, I guess, but you'd probably need to see a couple more high profile developers defecting before you can call it like a trend. But certainly he's, someone who's really risen his own public image in the past, 6 months, and very influential in Ethereum land. So big get for Anza. That was not on my big bingo card. When I saw that tweet, I was like, oh, wow. Didn't expect this.
Perhaps it's not a trend. I don't particularly care to analyze trends on this stuff, but it is, I would say, objectively bad if people in any ecosystem start getting ostracized for voicing opinions in a strong, direct manner. So hopefully that never happens on Solana.
Let me ask you this, Mert. If there was one developer or even just person, I guess, who's not in the Solana ecosystem that you could poach and guarantee that they would come start working on Solana, who would it be?
Probably Georgios, the former CTO of Paradigm, would be top of the list. And then Dankrad as well. Vitalik. I would go with those three.
Vitalik. That'll be the day. Well, the offers are out. We need to get Raj to start, contacting their spouses, get the ball moving on this one.
Yep.
But yeah, Max Resnick, big get for the Solana ecosystem. Speaking of big gets for the Solana ecosystem, I want to talk about Pudgy Penguins. Announced the Pengu token will be launching on Solana, and this caused the floor price of Pudgy Penguins to exceed the price of Bitcoin, which is pretty crazy, considering just the broader arc of NFT prices and so forth. What did you think? Were you involved in this news before it came out and all that?
Yeah, I was involved. I talked to Luca a few times and his team around what it would entail, if it makes sense to do it here. And we're helping out on the infrastructure end with Helios and working with their devs. And I'm stoked because penguins are my favorite collection for NFTs on any chain. In fact, one of my first NFTs was a fast food Pudgy Penguins derivative that I got just as a joke. It was a Pudgy Penguin with, I believe, ice cream on his head. And I think they're really dope. I like them quite a bit. And just out of my price range, because I don't buy NFTs mostly. I just mint them if I can. But very happy to see it. And then also there's Abstract Chain, which Pudgy Penguins is a part of. And I like those guys a lot as well, where they're very pragmatic, user focused, care about UX, all these things. And so it's a very nice thing to see. Happy to see more of that.
Yeah, I think Pudgy Penguins is probably like a leader in the NFT world as far as what's the next pitch? Like, okay, you had a very successful NFT brand in a prior market cycle. Now what? And their idea is, well, the IP is what's valuable. So let's find ways to monetize the IP. They created a video game. They have plushy penguins in stores. We have one or two in the Blockworks office, and they're very cute little stuffed penguins. Great gift for like a kid or something. And then that becomes essentially like the Webkins of Web3, if you will. And now you have this meme coin, which I don't know, people can kind of speculate on sentiment surrounding Pudgy Penguins. So lots of cool stuff being built over there. We need to have Luca on at some point to chat about this, but definitely another interesting sort of Ethereum ecosystem thing now having a Solana connection.
Yeah, I think their main thing was, well, the penguins are great, but perhaps some people are priced out. How do we get more people involved? How do we expand our user base? Because they are basically the symbol of NFTs, but also crypto IP in a sense. So I think it's a great move, and for sure we'll have them on. I believe we can do that pretty soon. So and also Luca has liked Solana for a while, so it's no real surprise. He's one of those rare guys who's not tribal about the tech. He cares about what it does for his product and business, which ultimately is the best way.
Chaos Labs, the leading on-chain risk management firm, recently launched its new flagship Oracle product, Edge, which delivers integrated, high-precision risk and price data for any on-chain application with a market. Edge emerged from stealth after 2 months, securing Jupiter, the top swap platform on Solana, already securing $30 billion in volume and more than 60% of all Solana perps volume. Edge is comprised of 3 components: price, risk, and proofs. It delivers high-precision price data with an integrated risk engine powered by Chaos's advanced outlier and anomaly detection algorithm. It automates delivery of real-time parameter adjustments on-chain based on current market conditions, and it enables the secure on-chain delivery of custom data points, including reserve attestations delivered via ZKPs. Most recently, Wintermute announced its selection of the Edge Proofs Oracle for Outcome Market, its new smart contract-based election prediction market tool. Thank you to Chaos Labs for making this episode possible. Celebrating 10 years of innovation, Ledger remains the most secure hardware wallet for your Solana and logins, trusted by 7 million users and securing 20% of the world's digital assets. In recent years, Ledger has built a robust ecosystem of products and services, making digital ownership more secure and accessible to everyone. Ledger's newest devices, Ledger Stacks and Ledger Flex, feature the world's first secure touchscreens, making it easier and safer to manage your Solana transactions and coins. With Ledger Live, you can seamlessly and securely manage and stake your SOL. Alongside Ledger Stacks and Ledger Flex, Ledger introduced the Ledger Security Key app, a safer alternative to traditional passwords, enhancing your overall digital security. Thank you to Ledger for making today's episode possible. Those are a couple of news items from potential people we may have on soon, so don't want to steal too much of their thunder. But let me ask you this, Mert. You have been tweeting a lot over the past, let's say, 2 months that there's a lot of teams, like big teams coming to Solana. Or I think this week you had a tweet, like the big teams coming to Solana behind the scenes. Obviously, you can't disclose a lot of that stuff on the podcast, but from what we've already seen, like what's the scale of what is yet to be announced? Like, is it the same level of teams? Is it even bigger teams than sort of the ones that have migrated in the past couple of months? What should people be preparing for on that front?
Well, so one piece of news today that I don't think got much coverage is that Chainalysis expanded to Solana. They did announce it on LinkedIn, which understandably it did not make the waves on CT, but that's a big one. Chainalysis is one of the largest and most successful crypto companies, and now they support Solana, which is particularly impressive because Solana data is hard to track, and Chainalysis' whole business is tracking data. So I think that's a pretty good one. Obviously, there have been some announcements. There will be more announcements, which I cannot disclose. In terms of scale, I would say roughly the same scale. And also very successful people in other ecosystems. There's also new teams spinning up. So there have been recent hackathons announced, like an AI hackathon for Solana, which is being sponsored by a bunch of teams. The new Breakpoint got announced as well, or at least tickets went on sale. So if you're watching, by the way, I would definitely get those tickets before they quadruple in price, which they do. And at least this week, since I was in Abu Dhabi, I saw a lot of government folks, but also payments and RWAs and funds, venture funds as well, look into expanding to Solana more and either expanding from other chains or simply expanding from Web2 to crypto and using Solana as the first step in the ladder. So perhaps I can make a bigger list once it's all said and done of this recent campaign. But what I look for is momentum. And there's no shortage of teams in terms of velocity messaging me and our team and also Solana Foundation day after day very consistently. So very good to see. And we are just getting started.
Yeah. The Chainalysis one is an interesting one. They're like a bigger deal, I think, than people in crypto realize. But they hired the head of the IRS criminal investigations unit. So like the guy in charge of US tax fraud crypto investigations, which is like a big deal. And he just went and joined Chainalysis a few months ago, I believe. So I actually didn't even know that they expanded to Solana, but that's definitely an interesting one. And yeah, it's been a continuing sort of movement. So at some point we'll have to make like a retrospective list of teams that have migrated over in recent times.
Yeah, and maybe three that I just didn't mention while they're off the top of my head is yesterday there were two announcements. One for Sphere, which will be building a payments network using SVM and just raised around yesterday. Same with Perena. I'm not clear on the Perena. And they're doing stable coin infrastructure. They just raised. And then you might have seen the Skip guys and the Cosmos guys talk about doing more with Solana and the SVM as well. So keep them coming.
Yeah. I don't know if we've gotten into this in a while, but like walk me through the connection between kind of Cosmos and Solana. Like I know like Lily Liu had a president of the Solana Foundation, I think came from the Cosmos world. And some of the like inflation schedule is taken from Cosmos. So what's the like admiration there? Or what's the connection, at least how you understand it?
I believe a good chunk of the early validator community of Solana came from Cosmos, meaning they were also Cosmos validators. And also, Cosmos tends to be much less tribal towards other ecosystems because, of course, their whole thing is interoperability and connecting different chains together. So they're generally quite fun and nice to work with, and they're very open to cross ecosystem collaboration. So we just did another one with Polaris, which is a cross-chain swap from the Osmosis team. And I went into spaces with that, with Sunny and also Lily, discussing their work. We also work with, of course, Wormhole, but also other Cosmos teams looking to add their support onto Solana and vice versa. And same with Near, actually. Near just announced a cross-stack swap, which abstracts the chain underneath, but they are also on Solana. They released something, I believe it's called Soul Swap, Soldex, something along those lines, which they showed off 2 weeks ago. So we more than welcome it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. That's always been one that I didn't quite get the connection there. But yeah, I want to get into Pump.fun, which has been coming up on these roundups a good bit recently. I believe in our last one was when I sort of made my case against meme coins. People on the internet were not very happy with that, but the news that's happened between now and then. So I think back when we were last talking about Pump.fun, there were some like violent and disturbing live streams, and then Pump.fun took down the live stream feature, and it's still down as of this recording. And then last week, Pump.fun restricted UK users. So there was a warning that was put out by the UK's financial regulator, and users in the UK could no longer get access to Pump.fun. I had a couple reactions to this. I think one, I was surprised it took this long. There's lots of crypto apps that you can't use in lots of places, like Polymarket, for instance. I don't believe you can access in the UK. The second one is someone in the Lightspeed Telegram was actually telling me this, but it's not really a ban. It's more that the UK has pretty strict crypto rules, and Pump.fun just never bothered to like submit the right documentation, it looks like. And so they're like retroactively enforcing the regulation in the country because Pump.fun had all this attention. I believe Pump.fun also might be located in the UK, or some of the team is there. There's been talk on Twitter about this, but I don't know, Mert, do you think we're headed into more Pump.fun drama, or is it do you see things kind of receding from here back to how it's been for the past several months?
My first reaction to hearing that was, quite honestly, I can't believe it was even allowed in the UK, which already has banned or disallowed multiple, much more innocent things, and who has come into the spotlight very recently as, let's say, arresting people or putting them in trouble for saying mean things on the internet, which aren't even crypto. So I was genuinely shocked. In terms of whether this means drama is coming for Pump, or will it continue to increase or decrease, etc. Of course, I don't know. Perhaps they'll, for example, I can say that I think it'll go away now, but maybe they'll re-enable live streams in 2 weeks, and maybe somebody will go do some really weird thing on it. So it's basically impossible to tell. I would say, though, one thing that I can be certain of is that people used to say Solana is the meme coin chain. All throughout the relative time period where Solana was outperforming all other chains. And now everything on each chain has quieted down somewhat, and perhaps shifted a bit more to AI meme coins instead. And now there's more activity on other chains as well. So this is to say that meme coins, and I mean even things like Litecoin or Dogecoin going up, those are obviously meme coins just as L1s as opposed to tokens on an L1. And so it's a crypto specific thing. Now, if you believe that speculation will ever get out of crypto, then you can maybe claim that meme coins will too. But fundamentally, I think they're I don't trade them myself, but it's very clear that people look at them as a fun way to gamble or speculate or have fun, play sorts of PvP games in their group chats. And more teams seem to be releasing infrastructure around these things. Even teams are releasing new meme coins in the NFT world, like Penguins. So from that perspective, it seems like meme coins will still be around. And I don't think there's any reason to want them to not be around because they're just tokens. That being said, of course, we can do a much better job of, for example, the Hawk Tuah coin, which launched, and people at first assumed it was malice that the insiders just had all this supply. But actually, what happened is they got sniped by a bot, which, again, that is something where we can meaningfully improve the infrastructure around maybe token launch mechanisms or block explorers, things like this, to make this at least a bit more transparent. But I don't think you're going to eliminate the release the token part, and nor should you. So a lot of interesting stuff. I think Pump, obviously going through growing pains, they're very fast growing, very good team, and they're friendly. We work with them on the RPC stuff. So I think they'll continue to do well, especially as there's this sort of slowdown period. Hopefully they can scale up the operations, and we'll see what they come up with next.
Yeah. There was a period of time where when Haley Welch, the Hawk Tuah girl, started posting about like Solana meme coins and Mog or whatever, I don't know. I was like, what if we got her on Lightspeed? And I think I tweeted at her once, but I never really seriously pursued it. And yeah, sadly, after this Hawk Tuah token collapse, I don't think she's ever going to come on Lightspeed. I think she probably doesn't want to associate a whole ton with crypto because of how that went. So I'm sorry, everyone. She will not be joining us. I also don't really know what we would have talked about for like an hour with her. So
yeah, I don't think she understands crypto. She has a team that
yeah.
perhaps advises her on how to do certain things, but in general, even when I talked to Ray Dalio, who understands Bitcoin, when I was talking to him about Solana, he didn't know what Solana was. And his framing of it was, oh, blockchain. So that's how high level it is. And I do hate saying this because I don't think it's true to a large extent, but it's still true in some extents. And that truth is that we do seem to be still relatively early.
We're so early, Mert. We're so early. I mean, yeah, I think I've never met Ray Dalio, but as far as the Hawk Tuah girl goes, I really feel bad for her. She's I don't like 22 or something, and probably had business partners that encouraged her to do this thing that I don't think it's going to be disastrous for her or whatever. She still has her podcast, but like it was very embarrassing, and it was clear in the aftermath that she didn't really understand everything that this was going to entail. And also just, I mean, ask any founder who's done a token airdrop ever, like getting crypto people angry at you is hellish. So I don't know. I mean, obviously, like she had the choice to make this meme coin, and that is her responsibility that she has to own up to. But I also like a large part of me feels kind of bad for her for how that went. As far as like the immediate future for Pump.fun, something I've seen out there in the media that I just think is important to put in context is you can see that after Pump.fun disabled live streams, there's a huge decline in the number of tokens being launched per day. And while yes, that is true, the tokens have decreased significantly. That's because Pump.fun had reached a level of trading that was likely never going to be sustainable. Like it's done, I believe, hundreds of millions in revenue at this point within its first year of being a startup. And that type of growth, like, probably was never going to continue to the same velocity that it's been at. And I think that throughout the past 10 months, however long it's been now, 9 or 10 months that Pump.fun's been a big deal, it seems like again and again, people will say, there's some controversy around Pump.fun. People are mad about a change that happened or something that the developers did. And look, there's like a new hotshot meme coin trading platform that's going to take all of its users. And here's the thing, it never does. It never happens. Pump.fun continues to be the king of meme coin trading. In the meme coin space, they kind of innovated and created a platform where it's like when the Hawk Tuah girl wants to launch a token, she's not doing it on, Justin Sun's Tron meme coin launcher. They're doing it on Pump.fun. And so I think Pump.fun will be fine, with the caveat that if there is one thing that can slow down this platform, it is regulators. And if, a bunch more, if like say the SEC says, hey, this platform is really bad for retail users or something, and, sues them, like that's obviously bad for Pump.fun. But I don't think that public sentiment is going to bring them down, because it never does. And even if the chart for token launches or revenue or whatever looks like it's pretty bad for Pump.fun, that's because Pump.fun was bringing in probably way more revenue than was going to be sustainable for it in the first place.
We'll see. I think there's also somewhat of an overall trend downwards in crypto in general. These cycles come up and down. So we'll see. As long as people focus on users, which people seem to think Pump doesn't, but they do, which is why people use that platform. I think they'll do well.
I mean, something I was thinking about this morning, Mert, is like, before we had Pump.fun, the speculative app in crypto was FriendTech, which was a way worse UX. Like it was a innovative, better platform than sort of what was out there before. And I hate to bear post on SocialFi because I know you're a fan, but like stuff was way worse before, just from like how easy it is to use, how viral it can go, before Pump.fun came out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The first version of FriendTech was unusable. I couldn't even use it. And I don't think it is generally reflective of all of SocialFi. There are some. So for example, it seems like Kaito has released a new thing called Yapper Points, and they are trying to gamify the social aspects and tie points to it and all these things. So that's SocialFi. And it's generally, or to me, it seems like it's one of the biggest talked about things recently. And those are the kinds of things I'm talking about, where you can tie in social things with finance a little bit and gamify them. That's interesting. And I think there's a lot more to see there.
No,
but in general, if the market is good enough, it will pull a product out of you, as opposed to you having to design the perfect UX and forcing it on people. So it depends on the market.
Yeah, the Kaito Yapper AI thing is really cool. I was speaking to someone over there last week, and they were kind of like, look, we were an AI analytics company, but the thing that really took off was the crypto Twitter stuff. And so it looks like they're leaning into that more, which, yeah, I'm a certified yapper on Kaito. I'm interested to see where it goes, but we're also in the presence of the number one yapper on Kaito, apparently the number one crypto Twitter user.
That's on the past 12 months. Ansem is number one for the past few days or week or something like that. See, my thing is very sustained, consistent shit posting throughout every single day, as opposed to bursts of a lot of shit posting.
But the thing is, Mert, is like there are people out there with more followers than you, but you have the most like engagement, I guess, on crypto Twitter over this long-term horizon. So is that frustrating? Like, I just feel like nobody on Twitter gets followers anymore. This is a separate aside, but like people like crypto public figures used to have like 3 million followers, and now that's just not really a thing that happens with newer crypto figures.
Personally, I don't look at followers or care about them. I never have. The reason is because what I believe to be more important is impact. So if you voice your opinions and you make some point such that it propagates and everybody else is talking about it, then, okay, so you have some voice, and that's what I care about, having a voice. But if the number of followers, and I was looking at these analytics, Twitter released something new called Radar, where you can see sort of a bit more detailed analytics into how your profile behaves or different search terms. And I believe I've had roughly 180,000 followers or 190,000 followers. For reference, I have 166 right now, which means tens of thousands of people have unfollowed me after following me. So I think it's you can't just take the good and not take the bad. It's name of the game. I'm a particularly annoying person on Twitter, so I don't aim to make friends or be loved or anything. Just would like to say what I want. That's it.
Yeah, I think there was a bot purge too because I lost a bunch of followers. And I do care about followers. I'll admit that. Everyone, go follow me on Twitter. I need to hit 2,000 again. I went below it. But okay, we're off topic. One thing I want to ask you about, Mert, is the something that happened kind of on the core level for Solana this week, which is that the protocol raised the block limit. And this isn't something that I've had the time to look into deeply. So I kind of just want you to be my Sherpa and explain to me what this means and why I should care about it.
Sure. So the way Solana works is for every block that's produced, there's a number that determines how many transactions you can fit into it. And that number is called a compute unit or a CU, meaning how many compute units can you fit into this one block, right? This is also why TPS is not the best metric because, for example, you can have 100 transactions with very high compute unit usage, perhaps they're complex transactions, or maybe you can have 100,000 transactions with tiny compute unit usage, maybe simple signatures or not signatures, but very small transfers. And so that dictates how many compute units can fit into a block and hence somewhat the TPS as well. And what this change does, and currently that number is 48 million, meaning you can fit 48 million compute units into a single block. That generally tends to be around a few thousand transactions for that block. And there's also some smaller limits within that. So, for example, for each account, there is a 12 million compute unit limit. So, if you have one account that, let's say, does 40 million CUs, let's say it's the Jupiter program, you can't actually have that because it's auctioned off or partitioned off such that each account has a maximum allowance of 12 million. And this new change is more of a sanity check to simply change that number from 48 million to 50 million. And the reason this is important is because, one, with a small increase, you can see, okay, what starts to break? Did people take this number, this 48 million number, and hard code their programs or something into not using best practices, for example? Or, well, that's a general gist. And so with the 50 million, it's a sanity check. So we increase it and then we see, okay, what changed? Did anything break? Who was affected? Were the apps affected? Were the RPC providers affected? All these things. And then once you can be reasonably sure that it didn't change anything, then you can start getting into this groove of regularly increasing the compute units. So doubling them, for example, to 100 million. And that would very roughly maybe map to something like 2x the number of transactions or TPS.
Is there anyone in the developer community that's against raising the block limit? Like I think Hard Hat Chad from OR is in favor of this, and that's the context I've heard it in. But I mean, Bitcoin, for instance, had really knockdown, drag out fights over like the size of blocks. So, is there opposition, and what's the critique? I guess.
No, and somebody took one of my posts out of context and said, well, this is centralized decision making, which is why it moves fast. But of course, the real reason is because this is Solana is North Star in a sense, increased bandwidth, reduced latency. That's the whole point of having these cheesy sayings and having a North Star that's aligned to scaling the chain. This is just simply in line with what everybody who works on Solana already expects and wants going forward. In fact, the only opposition I've seen is that the limits are not increased enough. So people wanted the limits to increase even more, if you want an idea of opposition. And to also go back to the previous point about the centralized decision-making thing, now it is correct that Solana obviously has less total stakeholders than Ethereum. It has less client teams. It's been around for fewer years. And as a result, there isn't as many people to voice in on these efforts. That being said, there have been multiple proposals in the past, some of which Helios have drafted, where there was such violent disagreement that they were just scrapped, nothing happened. And so the specific example is a good example or illustration of doing something that the chain has always promised, which is scale with hardware. So that's the context.
One big narrative, I guess, that doesn't get talked about much anymore is like transaction failure rates. I guess just because the user experience of trying to land transactions on Solana, except for on Coinbase, I guess, but most other venues, it's pretty good. Um, so is there any implication there? Do block limits help transactions land at a higher rate?
I would not expect it to lead to a drastic change in that, because the spam problem is most generally an economic problem due to spam incentives. So, for example, the reason why you see high numbers of failed transactions is because you can submit 10 duplicate transactions and pay a small fee, but you don't care because you're not spending much money to spam to begin with. So it's more of an economic incentive problem. In terms of failed transactions due to slippage, so for example, one thing that's very common is somebody opens up Jupiter or wants to ape a shitcoin, but the shitcoin is moving at 20% per second. And as a result, by the time you've clicked approve, the price has moved. Or by the time your transaction has landed, the price has moved, and the program has failed on purpose so that you don't execute at that worst price. It potentially could help with that, but again, that's generally a different type of infrastructure problem. So I don't quite see. I'm pretty confident in saying this wouldn't help that.
The other, I guess, tech side, developer side thing I wanted to talk about this week is conversations about sandwich attacks have flared up again. It feels like every few weeks there's some kind of discourse will start happening around this issue, and there's maybe not consensus around how to resolve it. I think this most recent round was started because Ben from the like MarginFi related new kind of research shop that came out published something showing that basically claiming that the biggest sandwich bot on Solana could become the biggest staker in Solana within 1 to 2 years, because that sandwich attacker is looping the profits from sandwiching and staking it to themselves. And so this creates a big centralization risk for stake. And he basically came out and said the best solution could be to reintroduce a public mempool, which longtime listeners will remember Jito got rid of its public mempool because of sandwich attacks. And there's reasons for this we can get into, but I'll just start. Like, what's been your take on all this, Mert?
So this thing is unfortunately something that's heavily misunderstood by roughly everybody that I've seen comment on it, especially the usual suspects from the social layer industrial complex who do not understand what MEV means, even on Ethereum, but yet alone Solana. So what's happened is, so sandwiching and MEV has been a thing on Solana for a long time. As you pointed out, it's been brought up on this podcast several times in many different topics of discussion. So it's nothing new. And we have brought it up multiple times. In fact, we have blog posts on it. We released products around it. It's nothing new. And maybe to set the broader context for people who are super unfamiliar with this, the way MEV works is it stands for a few different things, but generally maximum extractable value. It used to mean minor extractable value in proof of work chains. And basically what it means is you can reorder transactions, or perhaps you see a transaction and put another one in front of it to basically take advantage of the structure of block ordering to make more money. Now, some of this is normal. Some of this is arbitrage between centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges. That's what we call non-malicious MEV. In Solana's case, what's interesting is most of this MEV is actually from paying Jito to land their transactions faster, right? So let's say there's a new shitcoin, you want to be the first, among the first to pick it up, you pay Jito and you land faster. Okay, so that's the general framing of it. And there is a particularly malicious type of MEV called sandwich attacking, which, if I'm to be extremely simplistic about it, basically means that whatever slippage that you set, you will get that slippage. You will get bad price execution. And generally, this tends to happen to people who are aping shitcoins with 10% slippage. They'll get bad execution
So
on the
your
price, on the
the
price of the
price will
coin.
change that 10%. It won't be what you were quoted basically when the trade executes.
When it executes, you'll get the worst price. It'll be basically you will pay extra while the attacker gains some profits from this. And that's depending on what kind of crypto person you are. That's generally bad. And I think it's bad. Most people think it's bad. It is inefficient and it's not going to work if crypto is to be the future of the financial system. And so Ethereum has been battling with this issue for over a decade. And anytime you have economic activity, there's opportunities for these types of attacks. And so as Solana increases in economic activity, these attacks increase as well. Okay, so that's the brief context. And I'm being very simplistic here. And what Ben has said is that he has been tracking a particular actor. This actor's name is Ari, by the way, who has legally threatened me multiple times and used to call something called D's node. So
He's
and
very
now I
active in
believe
the validator Discord, which I find
correct.
interesting. Yeah.
Yes. And it's a known character to basically cast a lot of shade towards others. And without commenting on his main motives, most people have pointed to him saying this is the person who does all the sandwiching and all the extraction and the private side deals with validators and stakers and all these different sorts of things. And so what Ben has said is this person makes a lot of money from doing this. And if they keep going like this and keep making a lot of money, then over time, if you play it out, he's worried that this person will get so much stake that they'll become a very large part of the percent stake of the network. Now, let's do the math on this. I believe his best day was something like $2 million in that day for the profits. Now, for him to get to number one validator as it stands today, who's number one validator? It's Helios. And we have over $3 billion in stake delegated to us. So you can imagine how everything would have to be static and this person would have to keep compounding infinitely before anyone solves this problem, which is not going to happen, with zero market change, market structure changes, everything like that. And if that continues, then it's a risk. Now, it is bad today on its own simply due to sandwiching giving people bad price execution and, let's say, exploitative behavior. So that's and the thing with that is we've been working to fix that anyways this whole time, right? It's not like people on Twitter said some mean thing and we're like, okay, let's just change our business model and now fix this problem. No, that's not correct. If you look at our product releases, we already released MEV Protect Endpoint months ago, and Jito disabled their public mempool, and all these people, Jupiter's adding MEV Protect, so is Camino, so are all these other teams. So it's something we already take very seriously and have been trying to fix or at least mitigate for a long time. And what's happened is Dan from Blockworks has a dashboard that shows total revenue, total real economic value. And they have taken one of my responses to one of those charts completely out of context. So basically what's happened is they have said, well, all this real economic activity comes from sandwiching, which to that I said, that's not correct according to the last data on this by Ghost, who's a sandwich monitor team, indexing team. It's a small percent of the total tips, which is correct. Now and by the way, here's the most important part, or one of the most important parts. This does not count towards real economic value because it's a private side deal between these shady pools and their validators, meaning it does not go back to all the validators on Solana. It does not go back to all the stakers on Solana. That can only happen through Jito plus priority fees because it's in protocol, right? So it makes no sense to say that's why the REV is high.
So it sounds like you then would not support bringing back the public mempool, because Ben's whole argument was kind of this stake centralization that ARSC or ARI, I guess, I don't know if they're the same, but I'm taking your word for it here. Basically, ARI is going to become such a like centralization risk to the network that it's worth turning back on the public mempool, which would actually increase the amount of sandwiching that goes on, but it would make it so that it's not just these private mempool side deal things that are doing sandwiching. It's like a broader amount of people, and so that value is kind of flows around the ecosystem more. But it sounds like you're saying, well, I don't think that the centralization risk is that big, so it's probably not worth turning on the public mempool.
Close. So you've described the mempool aspect correct, meaning if Jito were to re-enable it, it would democratize this value and such that every validator would become a part of it. My argument this whole time, which has been very consistent, has been show me the data. Can I please see the data? Because this person does this through multiple identities, rotating wallets, all these different things. If we are making the claim that they're going to become the number one validator on Solana through this alone, can I please see the extent of this so that we can actually make a better decision? For example, if this person is going to become this number one validator in 5 years, that looks very different for the solution than if this person were to do it in 5 months. And obviously, I have no control over the mempool. It's Jito's product. And they did have it on. If people have forgotten, by the way, Jito did used to have this mempool on, and then people were complaining that there was too much sandwiching going on, and so they turned it off. And so now people are like, let's turn it back on. And so that is not to say that either side is right or wrong. It is to showcase that it's a difficult problem, which is not easy to solve by simply making a shit post on Twitter and using out of context screenshots, which have nothing to do with the purported charts that are being published. Okay. That's kind of my point. We can make a much better decision on the solution once we understand the data better. That's my point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, lots more to get into on sandwich attacking and how it can be solved. And I'm sure we will in the future, but unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today. Mert, thanks for taking the time. It's been a lot of fun, and we'll see you all in the next one.